First of all, he's here. His name is familiar in the world of local politics, banking, and journalism. Now, Abel Harding tries his hand at fiction. He joins us ahead of his book launch tomorrow. Abel, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, this is a new turn for you. I mean, professionally, you've been in banking for decades. A lot of people will know your name because of the work that you did as a journalist and a columnist and a blogger here in Jacksonville. Um, in that time, you wrote a lot about politics. What made you want to write about politics in your debut novel?
You write about what you know, I guess. And politics is one of those things that is fascinating. It's full of interesting characters. And it was fun to experiment with. And that's kind of where the idea grew out of had a thought one day and kind of played with it. And it started with a short story and grew into a novel.
Tell us a little bit about how you came to writing. I mean, you've been writing almost since you were a kid
I
on
have.
one level or another.
I have, and I've been writing about politics since I was a kid, which probably isn't too surprising. But for me, I think the fun of this was I wanted to try my hand at fiction, and so I wrote a few short stories, worked with a couple of editors and coaches along that line, and then just really decided this came out as a short story, and got paired up with a really good editor here in
Lynn,
Jacksonville, Lynn Skapiak Harlan, and Lynn's someone she'd be a fascinating interview, more fascinating than me, by the way.
she's
Um,
edited a number of books in town. I mean, we recently had on Jim Draper,
yep,
who his book Shantyboat Stories is edited by Lynn. And of course, Lynn, I think, is largely responsible for Donna Deegan writing her first memoir about breast cancer. So and Tim Gilmore, she's been involved, in working with him. So
yep,
a lot of local writers
yep,
lean on Lynn.
yeah, absolutely. And Donna, actually, the mayor is the connection. She is who introduced me to Lynn a number of years ago. But we took the short story and kind of fleshed it out, and she kept on me, and it became this novel that'll come out tomorrow.
So this novel, we should say there's an event around this, and that's part of the reason that we're talking with you today is because this is at the BookMark in Neptune Beach tomorrow, and you're going to be doing, I think, kind of like a author, meet and greet, but
Yeah.
also some reading from
Yeah,
the
we'll
book.
do a little reading and then obviously sign some books. And it is available for purchase at the Bookmark right now and online at bookmarkbeach.com. And so I'm excited. That's my neighborhood bookstore.
Yeah.
And I love Rhonda was kind enough to invite me out there, and I'm really excited to do it.
So tell us for people who are curious about the plot. I mean, tell us a little bit about the story. It is, I should say, a fascinating. It is a page turner. It's about politics, but it really is about personal relationships. It's about some very difficult human realities. It's about substance abuse. It's about domestic abuse. Tell us a little bit about kind of the narrative.
Yeah, I think, politics started that's always been an interest, but I think one of the fascinating things something that's always fascinated me is human relationships, and how we interact with each other, what level we know each other at, and that's really, I think, you see a lot of it. Matt Phillips is the main character in this novel, and you really kind of you see a lot of his interaction with the world, his struggle with substances, his view of others and their struggles, and that's a very real human story. I've certainly in my life I've seen plenty of that, and I think that's where I grew up in a home where I grew up in a family where substance abuse was very visible and very real from at a young age, and so I think that's why I've always been a little fascinated by it and how it can take over lives, and so that certainly played into this, just from a you can build a character and you start with some kind of inspiration at some point, and that's the cool thing about fiction is you're not beholden to any storyline. You can just run with it and let it go.
I mean, I want to ask you about, kind of bleeding over from real life because,
Yeah.
you talk about experiencing substance abuse, but there's a lot of, I guess, there was a time when something called was like a Roman a clay. Sometimes autofiction is a term that's used, but there's a lot of things in this book that seem like they could be drawn from the life of a journalist. The lead character is a reporter covering politics, has some of the life experiences that you've had, including, being raised in a very conservative kind of fundamentalist home that presented some challenges to you personally and kind of in your evolution. So Talk a little bit about, how fiction mirrors
Yeah,
reality in
yeah.
this book.
Well, fiction always is a reflection of life, and so again, it's fun to go and play with it, and not beholden to a storyline. But certainly, you see Matt Phillips is the main character in this book, and he did have a conservative upbringing, and so that kind of fleshes out throughout the book is how he struggles. He's gay. He's a father. He's a journalist. Those are all, unique identities. I know a few things about those identities myself. And so certainly there was some inspiration from that, from, my experiences. But then the fun part is just, a lot of the plot really surprised me when you start writing. And I'm not going to give any part of the book away, but there was a twist in there that surprised me when I wrote it.
Mhm.
And a lot of this is being your mind. These characters get in my head, and I can only speak for myself as a writer, but these characters get in my head, and so then you just find yourself, if you're out on a walk, you just start imagining what they would be doing, how they would react to something,
Mm.
and that's kind of how the storyline kind of just came to being. And in some cases, it took me by surprise with how the plot went.
So, because you're from Jacksonville, because I'm from Jacksonville, and this book is about Jacksonville and
Yeah,
Jacksonville
yeah.
politics, and there is this sense of overlap. I reading it was finding myself like Googling madly for, like who was the city council president and the chair of the rules committee in 2015, because there's this, subplots about the nefarious things happening. And so,
Yeah.
I'm actually like actively looking for things, but there are some characters that do seem so rooted in real people. And I just want to read a little bit about a character whose name is Rick Tidwell, a gubernatorial candidate in this book. He has a black Republican running mate. And this is how you describe him. You said his head moves rapidly in a jerking fashion. He's almost robotic in his movements. I cringe when he opens his mouth. He has an awkward way of speaking. The words spill out of his mouth with a tendency to jumble on top of each other. It's painful to witness in person. There are a lot of reporters in this town that would recognize a certain gubernatorial candidate, then governor, whose speech pattern, um, matched that. You also describe him as pale skinned, topped by a head devoid of hair, and somebody that had been, made millions, raised by an impoverished single mother, dodged a spate of federal investigations. It does seem like there's a certain person in mind.
Well, I mean, all characters are at some point or another, you have an inspiration from someone. It's funny where for so many years, both in my professional life, in journalism, in and out, you see different people and they fascinate you, and they kind of pop in your head and you say, "Man, I'd love to make a character of that person." I mean, there's a character in the book that just years ago, getting on a flight, watching a man interact with a flight attendant, and that is where that one of the characters in the book, who wears a piece. That's where it came from, and watching him interact with a flight attendant, and his hair move a little bit, as he was trying as he was talking. That's where it comes from. So it's just like you never know
Mhm.
who you're going to see, and they just kind of stick in your head, and they become a character eventually. Yeah,
If you're just joining us, we were talking to former Florida Times Union reporter and columnist Abel Harding about his new novel. You can join the conversation by giving us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. I would like to ask you to do a little reading if you're willing
sure.
to do that. We should say the name of the book is Last Time I'll Ask. And I think you're going to read a section from sort of the beginning middle of the book.
Yeah, so chapter 7. And so I'll set the stage a little bit. So in this case, you've got the scenario is you've got a state representative who is already qualified for the ballot, but then they were picked to join a gubernatorial ticket. And so it's set up a unique scenario where the party chairs of the two counties that are part of this district get to choose who will be on the ballot,
Mhm.
since this was the only candidate that qualified for the ballot. And so it's a little controversial because in this case you have Patsy Irwin, who is the fictionary chair of the Nassau County Republican Party, is a distant relative of the young lady who's being floated as a replacement candidate. So in this scene, they are in the Nassau County Republican Party is meeting.
All
And
right.
so here in this church fellowship hall, where an oversized black cross hangs behind the speaker's podium, the members of the Nassau County Republican Party's executive committee view Jacksonville as the equivalent of Lot's Sodom and Gomorrah. More than one of tonight's speakers has, for all intents and purposes, said just that. Nassau borders Jacksonville to the north and was once a powerhouse in state government, back in the days when members of the Pork Chop Gang, lawmakers from rural North Florida, held a vice grip in Tallahassee. Its political power is diminished these days, and folks are none too pleased that their state and federal districts are lumped in with Jacksonville. Nassau County itself is an awkward blend of rural residents in the west, middle class subdivisions in the middle, and wealthy gated neighborhoods that populate the eastern point of the county where it abuts the Atlantic Ocean. I long ago learned to tune out the silliness that comes with this job. And this is Matt speaking. He's the reporter. Endure the bloviating from uninformed citizenry and public officials who stoke the flames of conspiracy for kicks. I'm getting my full share of that tonight. Our Republican voters hold fast to the teachings of the good book. Deandra Simmons, the woman who tipped me off to tonight's meeting in the first place, is speaking. She's barely 5 feet tall and heavy set with jowls that would make an English bulldog look slim. I've spent more than 4 decades fighting to turn out Republican voters in this county. I've walked every neighborhood, driven up and down every dirt road to visit supervoters. I've knocked on the doors of mobile homes and oceanfront mansions. I've marched every year in Washington, D.C. with Right to Life. Her voice is strong, no clue in it that she's pushing 90. I grew up in this county, raised 4 children in this county. She's louder now, pushing towards her grand finish. The voters of this county should be represented by one of their own. We make up the majority of this House district. We're a conservative, God-fearing people. She stomps one foot, shakes a wobbling finger in Patsy Irwin's direction. We're not about to let you sell us out to some highfalutin Ivy League abortionist just because her daddy can write a big enough check. What did they promise you, Patsy? She pauses, tapping the floor with her cane. The tight white curls atop her head shake. How much for your soul? The crowd loves it. A foot stomps in the back of the room, a slow, steady beat. The sound gains momentum as more join, building up steam until the entire room is standing, hands clapping, feet pounding the concrete floor. At the front of the room, Irwin's jaw resembles a race car on lap 164 of the Daytona 500. Her lips firm, they're pressed so tightly together they resemble thin strands of yarn. Tiny beads of sweat form under the gray bangs that hang halfway down her forehead. She pushes them back with one hand. I've heard what you had to say. Now it's your turn to listen to me. She's on her feet. One hand, balled into a fist, punches the air. No one in this room has worked harder for the cause of freedom. Her voice is strained, and she struggles to be heard over the noise of the crowd. They continue to stomp their feet. Random cries of sellout and traitor punch the air. Her face contorts, eyes squeeze. I take umbrage. The sentence comes out as a high-pitched squeak. She stops talking. Eyes brim as she starts to wail, a pitiful sight as her face twists. Tears pour down her cheeks, leave streaks in the heavy rouge as they drip on her blouse. Dark black clumps of eyeliner form on the edge of her eyelashes, drop to her cheekbones. A quick brush of her sleeve, and her face is a horror flick. Leave it to Nassau County politics to never disappoint, I think. This is more drama than I dared hope for.
It's good stuff, Abel.
Thank
And
you.
the book is like full of moments of, great humor. There, are characters that, as we say, resemble real people, but they're very well fleshed out. Um, there's a lot of pain in this story though, too.
Yeah.
And certainly the issue of substance abuse is a theme throughout. Um, what do you think the character learns, about himself in this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Matt was a character that I had developed and just continuously kind of played with. And I think one of the things that he learned, um, I tried to think of what he might say to his younger self, and it's don't be afraid. And I think that's his. You can kind of see it in it. He operates under a lot of fear. um, he stays in a relationship. And I think, the more I fleshed that out, trying to figure out why he was there, because that's one of the things Lynn and I kept working on is why is he still there? What's he, what's driving this? And it was fear. And so I think he,
Of a lot of different things.
fear of a lot of different things, fear of failure, fear of being alone,
Fear of
just
exposure in some
fear of
ways.
exposure. Yeah. So it's just, so he's just a character that, really had to look within himself and just face some things head on. There's a lot of fear in it.
Got a call from Charles on the West Side. Good morning, Charles. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Ann. Good morning, Abel. I had a question for you when you get an idea for a novel. Do you block it out by using, the classic outline form that I was taught back in high school English class to kind of get, a feel of how you're going to construct it? And when you introduce a new character, do you also describe like an article of clothing or whether they're wearing glasses or not when they enter the scene?
Yeah, those are great questions, and this is where I'll get in trouble because I don't think I follow the rules. It's funny. I did try to map this out of where I thought the story was going to go, and it did not go the way that I thought it was going to
Oh,
go.
really?
And so, and I finally, it's funny. I went back and looked at my outline of chapter ideas, and I didn't follow the outline, and so it's great as I've developed characters. I do try to write character descriptions for myself, who they are, how old they are, some of their upbringing, some maybe their professional life. So you can kind of I can start to feel them
Hmm.
and try to get in their heads. So I need that because you don't want to have someone pictured in your head as a character. Let's say they have brown hair and then suddenly you describe them with blonde hair later. You got to kind of know, you got to be rooted in who they are as a character. So I do write those out and really try to understand my characters. Do they have siblings? Do they have children? Um, just who they are. So I write that out. So I've got good character descriptions, and I may or may not use them in the book. But part of and this is something I really is I do use some of the descriptions he mentioned, like whether they wear glasses. I mean, that's a good beat in a book is someone adjusts their glasses, and so it helps you as a reader visualize. And I am a reader. I read all the time, and I have since I was very young. And you want to be able to be in the scene and be able to visualize it.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. Is you and not being overly descriptive, but maybe just they adjust their glasses, and then now they're wearing glasses.
And you do, I mean, kind of take your time with descriptions. You're not
Yeah.
like rushing from plot point to plot point. You really do kind of take moments to describe the people, the place, the setting, and kind of like the mood,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm a context guy,
Mhm.
for better or for worse. I have to kind of call it because I can go overboard with descriptions. So that is one thing I work on is not being overly descriptive, but able to paint a scene and show a scene without too many words.
What kind of feedback have you been getting from the people that have read it? The people that you've, either that are close to you that have read it, the people that you've asked to help you work on it. What kind of reactions?
Yeah, everyone's reaction has been very complimentary, which, you take with a grain of salt and I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's feedback. I had a good friend who reads, she's an incredible reader and reads much more than I do. And she asked me if there was going to be a sequel because when she got to the end, she's like, "There's more," and that made me feel pretty good. So the feedback has been very constructive and positive, and I appreciate that.
And so how do you, approach I mean, you've got a son sort of the same age as my son. Is it do you have to have conversations with him before it comes out about, there's elements of this book that, I'm writing about that are going to be, it's not the kind of thing maybe you wanna read about as like your dad wrote it, you know, or is he just chill and comfortable with that.
He's very my son's always been very chill and comfortable, and I don't think he's gonna pick this up and read it anytime soon. It's not about a car. So yeah, I doubt he'll read it. But he's always been he's a chill, he's a really good kid.
Yeah. I'm curious, we were talking about your work as a reporter and, in this role, the character is, meeting with people, getting information from sources. And there's this one character that you describe as the brown recluse, who's kind of this great source for this character, but is kind of within administrations and sort of always dishing on the person that they're working for, that's closest to them. And I wonder when you kind of move on from journalism, if you still kind of have these relationships that you have to protect,
Mhm.
conversations going back possibly even decades, but, people that revealed something to you, shared something with you that you continue to kind of hold their trust.
Yeah, absolutely, because a source is a source until the end of time. Um, it is interesting. There is a character in here, and I certainly saw that as a journalist, and I'm sure you've probably experienced the same. It's always and there's a couple lines in here about where Matt is trying to understand why someone is giving him information about someone that they are allegedly devoted to, loyal to,
Right.
and so that comes out a couple times where he's just trying to figure it out, and he kind of eventually comes to, hey, they're doing it just to feel something. He Matt turned out much more cynical, I think, as a journalist than I expected him to. But he's trying to figure out why and what's their motive, and sometimes it was just to see if that they mattered, that someone because they like to read something that maybe they know that they were the source of leaking.
People who just kind of want to feel valued or
Yeah,
needed in some way.
yeah, and if you can create your own little crisis, then create it
Yeah.
so you can feel it.
Well, Abel Harding, big congratulations. The book
Thank
is
you.
called Last Time I'll Ask. The event is tomorrow on Thursday at the BookMark in Neptune Beach. I believe it starts at 6 o'clock.
It does.
You can get your books there. You can get them signed. You can talk to Abel and ask him all the questions that you have. But thanks so much for being here.
Thank
Congrats
you.
again.
Thanks for having me.
All right.